The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for 10,000 years. 12 ancient races sat on the council, each one powerful and wise in their own way. The HFY were beings made of living crystal, their bodies shimmering with inner light. The Morani could read minds and speak without words. The Krill were giant insects with shells harder than steel. 9 other races completed the council, and together they had mapped every star and counted every world across 1,000,000 systems. They believed they knew everything there was to know about the universe. They were wrong. In their oldest books and most ancient stories, there were tales of a strange species from the far edge of the galaxy. These creatures supposedly lived on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. The story said they were impossible beings, full of contradictions that made no sense. They fought wars against their own kind, yet showed love to complete strangers. They lived barely 100 years, yet dreamed of living forever. They were weak and soft, yet somehow terrifying. These were just myths, of course. Bedtime stories for children. Every scholar agreed that such creatures could never have existed. The story said they had destroyed themselves long ago, burned up by their own violent nature. No one believed in humans anymore. Ambassador Kethra of the HFY remembered studying these old myths when she was young. She had found them fascinating back then. These tales of impossible creatures who refused to accept their own limitations. Now she was old and tired, and she wished more than anything that those stories were true. The Dominion War had been raging for 7 years. The enemy was called the Sithrak, and they had come from the empty darkness between galaxies. No one knew where they came from or why they had come. They simply appeared one day, billions of them, hungry and cruel and utterly without mercy. The Sithrak were nightmares given form. Their bodies were twisted combinations of flesh and metal, always changing, always growing. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They consumed everything in their path, stripping planets bare and leaving only dead rocks behind. One by one, the great races of the Council fell before them. The Morani homeworld burned for 3 days before the last of its people fled into the void. The Krill lost half their hive queens in a single terrible battle. The proud fleets of the Council, once numbering in the millions, had been reduced to a few thousand battered ships. Kethra stood in the great chamber of Station Elysia, the last major stronghold of the Council. Around her, ambassadors and generals argued about what to do next. Some wanted to surrender, to beg the Sithrak for mercy, even though everyone knew the Sithrak did not understand mercy. Others wanted to keep fighting, though no one could explain how they might win. The Crystal Ambassador felt despair settling into her ancient bones. She had lived for 4,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall, but she had never seen anything like this. The Sithrak were not just winning the war. They were ending it. Soon there would be nothing left to fight for. "We should send another delegation," one of the Morani ambassadors was saying. His voice was tired and thin. "Perhaps if we offer them tribute, they will spare some of our worlds." "They ate the last delegation," Admiral Yethrin of the Krill replied. His mandibles clicked with bitter amusement. "I do not think they are interested in talking." "Then what do you suggest?" "We cannot win this war. Our fleet is broken. Our armies are scattered. Every day we lose more ground." Kethra closed her eyes and thought of the old stories. She thought of the mythical humans and their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. What would such creatures do in this situation? Probably something foolish and brave and ultimately pointless. But at least they would go down fighting. A young officer suddenly rushed into the chamber, his face pale with shock. "Ambassadors! Our long-range sensors have detected something." "More Sithrak?" Admiral Yethrin asked wearily. "No, sir. Unknown ships. Dozens of them. They are coming from the direction of the galactic rim." The room went silent. The galactic rim was the very edge of explored space, where the stars grew thin and the darkness between galaxies began. There was nothing out there. Nothing except old myths and older stories. What kind of ships? Kethra asked, her crystalline heart beating faster. We do not know. The configuration does not match anything in our databases. But sir, ma'am, there is something else. The young officer's hands were shaking. They are broadcasting a message. They say they are from a planet called Earth. The word hung in the air like a ghost. Earth. The small blue world from the children's stories. The home of the impossible creatures who were supposed to be extinct. That cannot be, someone whispered. Play the message, Kethra commanded. A voice filled the chamber, speaking in rough but understandable galactic standard. It was a strong voice, confident and calm, with an accent no one had ever heard before. This is Commander Danny Vance of the Earth Systems Coalition vessel Liberty. We've traveled a long way to find you. We know about the Sithrak. We know about your war. We are here to help. The council members stared at each other in disbelief. This had to be a trick. Perhaps the Sithrak had learned about the old myths and were using them to create false hope. It would be a cruel joke, the kind of thing the enemy might find amusing. But Kethra felt something she had not felt in years. A tiny spark of hope, small and fragile but undeniably real. She remembered the stories about humans, how they were supposed to be fierce and gentle at the same time, how they loved deeply and fought harder, how they never ever gave up. Send a response, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Tell them we are listening. The young officer nodded and hurried away. Around Kethra, the chamber erupted into arguments and questions and demands for more information. But the Crystal Ambassador just stood there, watching the sensor display that showed those unknown ships drawing closer. Maybe the myths were just myths. Maybe this was all some terrible mistake or enemy trap. But for the first time in 7 years, Kethra allowed herself to hope. Because if the stories were true, if humans really did exist, then maybe the war was not lost after all. Maybe the creatures who dreamed of eternity had finally come to save them. Commander Danny Vance stood on the bridge of his ship, the ESS Liberty, and watched the alien station grow larger through the viewport. It was a massive structure, bigger than any city on Earth, floating in the darkness of space like a jewel made of light and metal. Behind him, 47 human ships held their positions in perfect formation, waiting for orders. Danny was 52 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. When humanity first discovered faster-than-light travel in 2089, everything had changed. They had spread out from Earth carefully, building colonies on nearby worlds, always searching for signs of other intelligent life. What they found had broken their hearts. They discovered the ruins first. Dead planets covered in burned cities and ancient bones. Civilizations that had risen and fallen while humanity was still learning to make fire. And then, 6 months ago, they found the survivors. A damaged ship had stumbled into human space, its crew dying from wounds and radiation. The beings inside were called Morani, and they could speak directly into human minds. Through them, Danny and his people learned the terrible truth. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of ancient races and great empires. But something was killing them all. The Sithrak had come from the void between galaxies. They were a plague of living nightmares, consuming everything in their path. The great council that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years was falling apart. Soon there would be nothing left. The Morani survivors had begged for help, even though they believed humanity was nothing but a myth. And humanity had answered. "They are hailing us again," said Lieutenant Maria Santos from her station. She was young and sharp, with black hair pulled back in a tight braid. "Same message as before. They want to know what we want. Danny nodded slowly. He understood their suspicion. To these alien races, humans were supposed to be extinct. Fairy tales. The idea that they had shown up out of nowhere with a fleet of warships must have seemed impossible. "Open a channel," he said. "Let me talk to them." The communication screen flickered to life, showing a face that was not human at all. The being on the other end appeared to be made of crystal, with features that shifted and flowed like water under glass. Her eyes were deep pools of blue light, and when she spoke, her voice rang like distant bells. "You claim to be human," she said. "This cannot be true. Humans are legends. Stories we tell to frighten children or give them hope." "Ma'am, I understand your confusion," Danny replied calmly. "But I promise you, we are very real. My name is Danny Vance. I command this fleet. We have come a long way to find you. Why?" The crystal being leaned forward, her light flickering with what might have been curiosity or fear. "Why would you travel so far? Why would you risk your ships and your people for strangers you have never met?" Danny thought about how to answer that question. He thought about the Morani refugees they had rescued, how they had wept with gratitude when humans offered them food and shelter. He thought about the dead worlds they had found, the ruins of civilizations that might have been friends. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth, just 12 years old, who deserved to grow up in a galaxy that was not ruled by monsters. "Because that is what humans do," he said finally. "We help people, even strangers, even when it costs us everything. We have seen what the Sithric leave behind. We will not stand by and watch it happen again." The crystal being was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was softer now, touched with something that might have been sadness. "You should know the truth, Commander. We are losing this war. Our fleets are shattered. Our worlds are burning. Your small force, brave as it may be, cannot change what is coming." Danny smiled. It was not a happy smile, but it was genuine. "Lady, you do not know humans very well yet. We have a saying back home. It is not the size of the dog in the fight. It is the size of the fight in the dog. I do not understand. It means that sometimes the small and weak can beat the big and strong. It means that courage and determination matter more than numbers. It means that we did not come all this way to give up." He paused, letting his words sink in. Around him, his crew was silent, watching and waiting. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. They believed in what they were doing. "We have studied your enemy," Danny continued. "We have learned how they fight, how they think, how they coordinate their attacks. We have spent 6 months preparing for this moment. I am not saying we can win this war by ourselves, but I am saying we can help you fight it. And maybe, if we fight together, we can find a way to beat them." The crystal being stared at him through the screen. Her light pulsed and shifted, reflecting emotions that Danny could not read. Finally, she spoke. "I am Ambassador Kethra of the Vethkai. I have lived for 4,000 years. I have seen wars and plagues and disasters beyond counting. But I have never met anyone like you, Commander Vance. Is that good or bad? I do not know yet." For the first time, something like a smile crossed her strange face. "But I think I would like to find out. You and your people are welcome here. Come to Station Elysia. We have much to discuss." Danny let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. This was just the beginning. The hard part was still ahead. But for now, first contact had been made. Humans and the Galactic Council would meet face to face for the first time in history. "All ships," Danny announced to his fleet. "We have been invited in. Maintain formation and follow the Liberty. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. And remember who we are." He looked out at the alien station one more time. Somewhere behind those walls, The survivors of a dying galaxy were waiting to meet the creatures from their oldest myths. Danny hoped they would not be disappointed. After all, humans had spent their entire existence exceeding expectations. He saw no reason to stop now. The Galactic Council gave humanity observer status at first. This was a polite way of saying they did not believe the small human fleet could make any real difference in the war. But they were too desperate to turn away anyone who offered help. So they welcomed the strange creatures from myth and waited to see what would happen. Ambassador Kethra was assigned to work with the humans and learn everything she could about them. It was supposed to be a simple job. Instead, it changed her understanding of what it meant to be alive. The first thing she learned was that humans were fragile. Their bodies were soft and weak, easily damaged by things that would not bother other species. A Vethkai like Kethra could survive in the vacuum of space for several minutes. A human would die in seconds without protection. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore without much effort. They could be killed by temperature changes that other races would barely notice. Yet somehow, they had conquered these weaknesses. They built suits that let them walk on airless moons. They created ships that protected them from the cold of space. They found ways to heal wounds that should have killed them. Where other species might have accepted their limitations, humans simply refused to be limited. The second thing she learned was that humans did not sleep like normal beings. Every day, they needed to become unconscious for nearly 8 hours. During this time, their minds created strange false worlds called dreams. Kethra found this deeply unsettling at first. How could any species survive when it spent a third of its life helpless and unaware? But humans had built their entire civilization around this weakness. They took turns watching over each other while they slept. They created lights and alarms and security systems. They had turned their vulnerability into just another problem to be solved. The third thing she learned was the most disturbing of all. Humans lived for only about 100 years. To Kethra, who had already lived for 4,000 years and expected to live for thousands more, this seemed impossibly short. A human life was nothing but a brief flash, there and gone before it could accomplish anything meaningful. And yet, in that tiny span of time, humans had achieved wonders. They had gone from living in caves to traveling between stars in less than 50,000 years. Other species had taken millions of years to make the same journey. Humans seemed to burn brighter because they knew they did not have long. Kethra spent most of her time with a human soldier named Katie Marsh. Katie was small and thin, with brown hair and a quick smile. She had scars on her hands from old battles, and she laughed easily at things that Kethra did not understand. That Katie had volunteered for the first contact mission, even though she had 2 young children and a husband waiting for her back on Earth. This confused Kethra deeply. "Why did you come here?" she asked one day. "You have a family, people who love you. Why risk never seeing them again?" Katie was quiet for a moment, thinking about the question. Then she smiled that quick smile of hers. "That is exactly why I came," she said. "I love my kids more than anything. But if we do not stop the Sithrak out here, eventually they will reach Earth. My babies will grow up in a galaxy where that threat is always hanging over them. I would rather face the danger myself than leave it for them to deal with. But you might die. Everyone dies eventually. Even you, I guess, though it takes a lot longer. The question is not whether you die. The question is what you do with the time you have." Katie shrugged. "I want my children to have a future. This is how I give them one." Kethra studied human history through their computer networks, which they freely shared with anyone who asked. What she found horrified her. Humans had spent most of their existence fighting wars against each other. They had invented countless ways to kill their own kind. They had come close to destroying themselves more than once. She could not understand how any species could survive such constant violence. It went against everything she knew about how civilizations developed. But then she saw the other side of their history. She read about doctors who ran toward disasters while everyone else fled. She learned about strangers who gave their lives to save people they had never met. She saw how humans rebuilt after every catastrophe, rising from the ashes to try again. They were not just violent. They were also incredibly kind. They could hate with burning passion and love with equal intensity. They were capable of both the worst cruelty and the greatest compassion. Sometimes in the same person, sometimes in the same moment. Katie tried to explain it one evening, when they were watching the stars together through a viewport. "We know we are going to die," she said. "Every human knows that from a very young age. It changes how you see the world. It makes everything more precious. Every moment matters because we do not have many of them. Does that not make you afraid? Of course it does. We are terrified all the time. But fear is not the same as cowardice. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do the right thing even though you are scared." Katie laughed softly. "Honestly, I think that is what makes us so dangerous. We know we are going to lose eventually. We know we cannot live forever. So when something threatens the people we love, we have nothing to hold back." 3 days later, the Sithrak attacked Station Elysia. The alarm sirens woke Kethra from her rest, and she rushed to the command center to find chaos everywhere. Enemy ships were pouring out of hyperspace, thousands of them. Far more than the defenders could hope to fight. She found Commander Danny Vance standing calmly in the middle of the storm, issuing orders to his small fleet. Around him, his officers moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for a battle they had no right to survive. "You cannot win this," Kethra told him. "There are too many of them." Danny looked at her with those tired human eyes, and he smiled. "Maybe not," he said. "But we are going to try anyway. That is what humans do." And then he went to war. The Sithrak fleet numbered over 2,000 ships. The combined forces of the Galactic Council, including the human contingent, had less than 400. Every admiral and strategist agreed that the battle was already lost before it began. Commander Danny Vance did not care about the numbers. He stood before the hastily gathered War Council, facing beings who had commanded fleets for centuries. They looked at him with mixtures of hope and doubt, wanting to believe he had answers, but not truly expecting any. "We have been studying the Sithrak for 6 months," Danny said calmly. "We know how they fight. They are aggressive and fearless. They do not care about losses. They just keep coming until they overwhelm you." "We know all this," Admiral Yethrin of the Krill replied. His insect eyes gleamed with frustration. "We have been fighting them for 7 years. Nothing we do stops them." "That is because you fight like civilized beings," Danny said. "You try to minimize your losses. You pull back when the odds turn against you. You think about survival. And you do not?" Danny smiled grimly. "Let me tell you something about humans, Admiral. We spent most of our history fighting each other. We got very good at it. We learned that sometimes the only way to win is to be crazier than your enemy. To charge when you should retreat. To attack when you should defend. To make your enemy so confused and scared that they do not know what to do next. That sounds like suicide. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it works. And right now, we do not have any other options." The plan Danny proposed was insane by any reasonable standard. It ignored every rule of void warfare that the Council had developed over thousands of years. It relied on human ships doing things that should have been impossible and human crews, surviving conditions that should have killed them instantly. The alien admirals argued against it. They said it could not work. They said it would just waste lives for nothing. Danny listened politely. Then he deployed his fleet anyway. The ESS Liberty led the charge, diving straight into the heart of the Sithrak formation. Behind it came the Defiance and the Hope, followed by every human ship that could still fly. They were not trying to hold a defensive line. They were not trying to survive. They were trying to reach one specific target: the Queen ship. Every Sithrak fleet was controlled by a queen, a massive creature that served as the hive mind for all the others. Kill the queen, and the fleet would fall apart. The problem was that the Queen ship was always at the center of the formation, protected by thousands of warriors. Human weapons were different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity had spent its existence finding new ways to kill, and those weapons had been designed to fight other humans, beings just as clever and dangerous as themselves. Railguns that could punch through any armor. Missiles that could track targets across impossible distances. And when those failed, the humans had one final weapon. They had themselves. Lieutenant Maria Santos managed communications through waves of pain. The acceleration was crushing her chest, cracking her ribs, but she kept her hands steady on the controls. She had a job to do. "Commander, the Defiance is hit. They are losing atmosphere on decks 3 through 7. Tell them to seal those decks and keep fighting," Danny ordered. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "We are almost through." The Liberty shook as another Sithrak weapon struck its hull. Alarms screamed. Fires broke out in the lower sections. But the ship kept moving forward, punching through the enemy formation like a fist through paper. The Queen ship loomed ahead, a massive organic structure half a mile across. It pulsed with sickly light, and tendrils of flesh extended from its sides like grasping fingers. The thing was not just a ship. It was alive, and it was the brain that controlled every Sithrak in the fleet. "All weapons, fire at will," Danny commanded. The Liberty opened up with everything it had. Railgun rounds tore through organic armor. Missiles exploded against the Queen ship's sides. But the creature was too big, too tough. It would take hours to destroy it this way, and they did not have hours. Danny made a decision. "All hands, brace for impact. We are going in." The Liberty accelerated to maximum speed and drove straight into the Queen ship's side. Metal screamed as the human vessel tore through layers of flesh and bone. The ship died around them, systems failing one by one. But the crew was already moving. Marines in powered armor stormed out through the breached hull, carrying weapons designed for close combat. Sergeant Katie Marsh led one of the assault teams, her rifle barking as she cut down Sithrak warriors in her path. The creatures were terrifying up close, all teeth and claws and chitinous armor. They moved faster than anything that size should move, and they felt no fear. But humans had been killing dangerous things since they first learned to sharpen sticks. And these Marines were the best humanity had to offer. "Contact left." Someone shouted. Katie spun and fired 3 times. The Sithrak warrior collapsed. "Keep moving. The core is 2 levels down." They fought their way through organic corridors that pulsed with alien life. The walls seemed to close in around them. Strange sounds echoed from the darkness. But the Marines did not stop. They could not stop. They found the Queen's chamber at the heart of the ship. The Queen herself was enormous, a bloated mass of flesh and tentacles that filled the entire room. Her eyes were everywhere, watching, hating, waiting. She screamed. The sound was not just physical. It was psychic, a wave of pure mental force that struck every human in the room. The Council races would have been killed instantly by such an attack. Their minds were built for telepathic communion, open and vulnerable. Human minds were different. Human consciousness was a chaotic mess of random thoughts and stubborn willpower. The psychic attack that should have destroyed them just gave them headaches. Katie gritted her teeth against the pain and raised her weapon. "Jackson, plant the charges." Specialist Tim Jackson ran forward, moving through the Queen's screaming defenders, and placed explosive charges at the base of her throne. The devices were not normal explosives. They were electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to disrupt the Queen's neural network. "We are hot," Jackson shouted. "Everyone out." Now, the Marines ran. Behind them, the charges detonated. The Queen's scream changed, becoming something broken and desperate. The psychic link that connected her to her fleet shattered. Across the battlefield, Sith-Wreck ships began to drift. Without the Queen's guidance, they were just animals, dangerous but uncoordinated. The Council fleet, battered but still fighting, pressed the attack dot. By the time rescue shuttles reached the surviving Marines, the battle was over. The Sith-Wreck were routed, scattered, fleeing in confusion. The Queen was dead, and her fleet was broken. Commander Danny Vance was pulled from the wreckage of the Liberty with a broken arm and burns across half his face. He was smiling. "Did we win?" he asked. "Yes, Commander," someone answered. "We won." Danny nodded and closed his eyes. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never forget. 6 months after the Battle of Alesia, the war began to turn. It was not a quick victory. The Sith-Wreck were too many, spread across too many systems for any single battle to end the threat. But something had changed in the galaxy. A spark of hope had been lit, and it spread like fire through dry grass. Word of the human victory traveled faster than light itself. Species that had given up hope began to fight again. Resistance movements that had gone into hiding came out to strike at Sith-Wreck supply lines. Worlds that had been preparing to surrender chose to stand and defend themselves instead. And everywhere, beings asked the same question. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? How had they done the impossible? Commander Danny Vance, now promoted to Admiral, spent much of his time answering these questions. He traveled from world to world, speaking to gatherings of aliens who stared at him with wonder and disbelief. He told them about Earth, about humanity, about why they had come so far to fight for strangers. "We are not special," he said to the Galactic Assembly, standing before representatives of 100 different species. "We are just stubborn. We have spent our whole existence fighting against things that should have killed us. Against nature, against disease, against each other. Somewhere along the way, we learned something important. You do not need to be the strongest or the smartest to win. You just need to refuse to give up." The assembly was silent, thousands of alien eyes fixed on this small creature from the edge of the galaxy. "The Sith-Wreck are strong," Danny continued. "They are numerous. They have been winning this war for 7 years. But they have never faced an enemy like humanity before. They have never fought beings who do not know when to quit, who keep getting back up no matter how many times they get knocked down, who would rather die than surrender." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "We cannot promise you victory. No one can promise that. But we can promise you this. We will fight beside you until the end, whatever that end may be, because that is what humans do. We show up, we fight, and we never, ever stop." The war lasted another 3 years. Humans fought in every major battle, their small ships and stubborn soldiers becoming legends across the galaxy. They took losses that would have broken other species. They kept fighting anyway. Admiral Danny Vance commanded the final assault on the Sith-Wreck home territory. It was the largest fleet ever assembled, ships from every council race flying alongside human vessels. The battle lasted for 9 days. When it was over, the Sith-Wreck were broken forever. The Galactic Council offered humanity a permanent seat among the elder races. After much debate, because humans could never agree on anything easily, they accepted. The Earth Systems Coalition became the 13th member of the Council. equal partners with civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Katie Marsh went home after the war. Her children were older now, her husband grayer, but they were alive and safe. She had kept her promise. She had given them a future. Sometimes, late at night, she would go outside and look up at the stars. She would think about the friends she had lost, the battles she had fought, the things she had seen. She would remember the terror and the pain and the moments when she thought she would never see her family again. She never regretted any of it. Ambassador Kethra lived for another 3,000 years after the war ended. She devoted much of that time to studying humanity, trying to understand the mystery at the heart of their nature. In the end, she wrote a document that became required reading for diplomats across the galaxy. She wrote about their fragility and their strength. She wrote about their short lives and their endless dreams. She wrote about their capacity for violence and their equal capacity for love. And she tried to explain why these contradictions made them the most remarkable species she had ever encountered. "The humans have a saying," she wrote. "It is not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." I did not understand this at first. Dogs are small animals from their homeworld, fierce, but hardly impressive. How could such a creature represent anything important? Now I understand. The humans are the dog. They are small and weak and brief. They live in a universe that should have crushed them long ago. But they refuse to be crushed. The fight in them, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat, makes them more powerful than any elder race. We thought they were myths. We were wrong. They are the future. On Earth, in the city of Chicago, there stands a memorial to those who fell in the HFY War. It is not a grand monument. Humans prefer their memorials simple, but visitors come from across the galaxy to see it, beings of every shape and size standing together in quiet respect. At the base of the memorial is an inscription in 100 languages. The words were chosen by Admiral Danny Vance before he died at the age of 93, surrounded by his family and friends. The inscription reads, "They came from beyond the stars to destroy everything we loved. We went to the stars to stop them." That is what humans do. We show up. We fight. We win. And when we fall, others rise to take our place. We are not the strongest. We are not the wisest. We are not the oldest. But we are here, and we are not going anywhere. The HFY never returned. Perhaps they found easier prey somewhere else. Perhaps they simply learned what every species eventually learns about humanity. There are some fights that are not worth winning. Or perhaps, somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, they still tell stories about the impossible creatures from the small blue world. The ones who dream. The ones who hope. The ones who fight for strangers and never surrender. The ones who were supposed to be myths. The ones who saved the galaxy. The ones called humans.